My love, I'm finally home, the man said, voice cracked, eyes wet. His coat was torn. A small brown travel bag hung from his shoulder. Soap bubbles drifted on the air between them, like tiny ghosts. Sandra dropped the clothes she was washing. She stared. Her face hardened. You? I lost everything, he whispered. I came back with nothing. Please, help me. Sandra's jaw clenched. Without a word, she gripped the bowl with both hands, lifted it, and hurled the foaming water straight into his chest. The water slapped him cold. Clothes slapped him too. He stumbled, drenched, his overgrown beard sliding over one eye, soap running down his cheeks like a sad mask. One cloth hung on his head. You are a disgrace, Sandra said in a flat voice. My biggest mistake. The man sank to his knees in the mud and suds. Sandra, please. She picked up her phone. She smirked, tapped, and put it to her ear. Jude, come now. Come and see what shame looks like. The man's shoulders shook. He pressed his palms together as if holding his heart from breaking. From inside the house, a radio played a gospel song about mercy. Outside, there was none. He stayed kneeling. The small gate clicked again. Jude entered with long strides, cologne first. He wore a tight polo and a bold grin. Where is he? Sandra pointed. There. See him? He left for 10 years. Came back with nothing. You hear me? Nothing. She turned to the kneeling man. Thank God I moved on. Thank God I'm carrying Jude's child. The man's eyes closed, and for a breath, the whole compound went quiet, as if the world held its breath too. Stand up, madam, Jude said loud on purpose. Let's go inside. They stepped into the house. The door shut. The radio kept playing Mercy. The man kept kneeling. He could hear them laughing. Then, after a while, the laughter stopped, and the bed creaked. The man's hands shook so hard he pressed them into the muddy ground to stop them. He breathed through his nose. He looked at the sky. He opened his mouth and said only one word, soft as prayer. Why? Hours earlier, the airport air had felt like a new life. After 10 long years in London, Jeremy rolled his carry-on past customs and the blinking welcome to Lagos sign. He wore clean clothes then. His hair was neat. His phone kept buzzing messages from his assistant David, from the security team, from bankers confirming tomorrow's board meeting at his new company headquarters in Victoria Island. On the glass wall outside, the sun bounced off a line of black SUVs waiting for him. Drivers stood at attention. People watched with wide eyes. Sir, convoy is ready, David had said on the phone. Jeremy stared at the glass and saw his own face. He saw the smooth beard, the healthy glow. The rich man people would kneel for. He also saw the gap 10 years wide between him and the woman he had left behind. 10 years of promises, of nights alone in a cold room, of hustling and praying and building. 10 years of sending money when he could, letters when he couldn't, and dreams every night. Not yet, he told David. Cancel the front pickup. Park 2 streets from my house. Wait for my call. Sir? I need to see something, Jeremy said. I need to know. He checked into a small hotel on the mainland. He opened a secret package shipped from London a week before. Inside was a torn coat, a cheap wig with tangled curls, a little bottle of glue, a tube of fake dirt, a small envelope with a single old photograph, him and Sandra on their wedding day under a mango tree, both laughing so hard the camera shook. It was the kind of laughter you think will last forever. He dressed himself in the lie. He glued the wig down, rough and itchy. He smeared fake dirt under his nails and across his cheek. He tore the coat a little more. He practiced a sad smile in the mirror and felt sick. Sir, this is risky, David said when Jeremy phoned. We can go straight home. Announce properly. Bring your wife flowers. Bring the press if you want. Lagos will shout. I don't need Lagos to shout, Jeremy answered. I need my heart to answer. If she is loyal, I will make the ground gold under her feet. If she is not. He didn't finish. David was quiet. Where should we wait? The next street, Jeremy said. You'll know when to come. He hung up and sat with the old photo for a long time. He touched the picture, Sandra's smile, and felt his chest ache. Let it be good, he whispered. Let my home be safe. Then he left the hotel, took a regular cab, like a regular man, and watched the city roll by. Yellow buses honked. Street hawkers waved cold drinks. A billboard showed a happy family holding hands under blue sky. He wondered if billboards ever told the truth. The cab dropped him on the corner. He walked the last steps alone. Now, back in the heat of the compound, time crawled. The radio changed songs. A neighbor's baby cried. Somewhere far away, a mosque called the afternoon prayer. The door opened. Sandra came out with a different kind of smile. Jude followed, buttoning his shirt like a man who thought the world belonged to him. Now, Sandra said. Jude, start calling buyers. We're selling this house today. I have paused my life for 10 years for this mistake. My pay is due. Jude laughed and pulled out his phone. He made 2 calls, his voice loud and showy so the kneeling man could hear each word: price, documents, quick sale. The man kept kneeling. Somewhere under the wig and the dirt, hidden behind the tears, Jeremy was counting his breaths. 1, 2, 3. The way he used to count the steps up to the night bus in London when it was snowing and his shoes were too thin and his hands were numb. He counted then so he wouldn't cry. He counted now so he wouldn't break. Look up, Sandra snapped. Say thank you. Say thank you that at least I will allow you to watch how real people do life. He looked up. He saw a woman he knew and did not know. The mango tree bride had hardened into a stone he could not lift. He searched her eyes for the old laughter. He did not find it. 2 men in plain shirts arrived. The buyers. They walked around the house, peeking through windows, nodding like chickens. They checked the fence, the taps, the tiny generator house. One stepped close to Jeremy, wrinkled his nose, and stepped back. It's good, Jude said, rubbing his hands. We can do transfer now. Network is bad, one buyer said. We'll do transfer at the bank. You, he pointed at Jude. Follow us. Sandra waved. Go, fast, don't waste time. Jude flashed a thumbs up at her and a sly smile at Jeremy. See you soon, loser. They left, the small gate squeaking again like a tired mouth. Sandra sat on the low step by the door and took a long breath, satisfied. She took out a mirror and checked her lips. She looked at the kneeling man as if he were a stain on the floor. Stand up and go, she said, before I wash this floor again with your tears. Jeremy's knees felt like stone. He stood slowly, water and soap dripping onto the dust. He held his old brown bag tight on his shoulder. The radio inside the house switched to news. A new mall was opening on the island. A billionaire was rumored to be back in the country. People in the neighborhood always listened to news. It felt like everyone else's life was moving forward. Sandra rose and dusted her hands. Wait until Jude returns, she said. You will watch me sign the papers, then you can wander off to the gutter you came from. Jeremy blinked the soap from his eyes. He reached into the torn inner pocket of his coat and touched a small hidden phone the size of his palm. He turned, walked to the street, and stopped under the almond tree shading the gate. He dialed David. Now, he said. Sir? David's voice was tight, like a rope pulled hard. Bring them in. He ended the call and walked back through the gate. Sandra folded her arms, irritated. Who are you calling, beggar? The first black SUV turned the corner like a quiet shadow. Then another. Then another. The compound shook with the hush of power, not loud, but heavy. Neighbors pulled curtains aside. A little boy on a bicycle stopped and stared with big eyes. The small gate swung open, and 3 men in black suits stepped in first, earpieces glinting. They scanned the compound and nodded. The SUVs rolled in, tires slow on the dusty ground, engines purring like big cats. The doors clicked. The men stepped out and bowed toward the drenched homeless man by the step. Sir, David said, voice steady, eyes hot with anger he tried to hide. Your orders? Sandra's mouth fell open. For 1 second, she forgot how to breathe. Her mirror slid from her fingers and cracked on the concrete. Jeremy stood, his spine straightened. The wig sat crooked on his head, and the fake beard glue itched, and his coat dripped, but his eyes changed. They were no longer soft, they were steel. He walked to the nearest SUV, opened the door, and sat inside. The door shut with a quiet thump. Through the tinted glass, Sandra could see only her own scared reflection. He stayed inside for 10 long seconds. Then the door opened again. Out stepped a different man. The wig was gone. The fake beard was gone. The torn coat was gone. In their place, a crisp, expensive suit that caught the sun and threw it back. polished shoes, clean hair, a watch that whispered numbers no one else could count. The same face, but now the right one. Jeremy closed the door gently and faced Sandra. She dropped to her knees so fast, her bones knocked the ground. Jeremy, I didn't know. Jude's voice exploded outside the gate, breathless. He had run back alone. Network problem. He stopped. He saw the suits. He saw the bows. He saw Jeremy. He turned to flee. 2 secret guards took him by the elbows and set him on his knees beside Sandra. The radio inside the house faded to a whisper. The whole compound felt like the world had put a finger to its lips. Jeremy took 1 step forward. He looked at Sandra. He looked at Jude. He looked at the house where laughter used to live. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. Sandra, I was faithful. I built a life. I came home to test the only thing money cannot buy. This is what I found. Sandra began to cry, loud and messy, reaching out a shaking hand. Please, forgive me. Jeremy's eyes did not move. He pointed at the old bungalow. Like you said, this house is your pay. Keep it. A whisper ran through the crowd growing by the fence. A dog barked once and stopped. Jeremy lifted his hand. Escort him, he told the guards, nodding at Jude. Jude swallowed hard. Sweat ran down his neck. Jeremy turned back to Sandra, and his next words were a blade wrapped in silk. And as for me, I'm not the man you poured soap on. He raised his phone again, thumb hovering, and the convoy engines roared to life. The suits tightened around the gate, neighbors pressed closer, and Sandra, on the ground, reached up with both hands. The sound of the convoy's engines filled the compound like thunder rolling through the sky. Neighbors pressed closer against their windows and doorways, whispering in confusion. Children ran to the gate, trying to catch a glimpse of what was happening. To them, it looked like a scene from a movie. Sandra's hands trembled. She tried to speak, but her lips quivered too much to form words. Her eyes darted from the gleaming SUVs to the men in black suits, then back to Jeremy, who now stood regal and unrecognizable in his fine suit. The man she had mocked, drenched, and humiliated just moments ago was no longer a beggar. He was a king. Jude swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his forehead. He tried to crawl back toward the gate, but 2 guards held him firm, forcing him back onto his knees beside Sandra. Jeremy took slow steps toward them. His polished shoes crunched on the gravel, each sound echoing like a drumbeat. His eyes were calm, but the weight behind them was unbearable. He was no longer pleading. He was no longer broken. He was the judge in his own courtroom. Do you see me now, Sandra? His voice was soft, almost too soft for the tension in the air. Do you see the man you poured water on, the man you spat at, the man you called a disgrace? Sandra broke down completely, pressing her forehead to the ground. Jeremy, forgive me. I didn't know. Please, I beg you. It was the devil. Jeremy cut her off with a single raised hand. No, it was your heart, and your heart has spoken. The crowd at the gate gasped. Some covered their mouths with their palms. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Everyone knew now. This was not just an ordinary man. This was a billionaire who had returned home, hiding his wealth behind a disguise, only to be betrayed in the cruelest way. Jeremy turned to Jude. And you? He said, his eyes sharp. You thought you could crawl into my house, into my bed, into my life. You thought my absence was your opportunity. Jude stammered, his usual confidence shattered. Sir, I didn't mean... Jeremy's guards tightened their grip on his arms. Jude winced in pain. Enough, Jeremy said. His gaze returned to Sandra. You claimed this house as your pay, Sandra. You said 10 years of waiting was wasted on me. Fine. I will not take this house from you. It is yours. Consider it my final gift. Sandra looked up, stunned. Jeremy, please. No, don't leave me. I'll change. I swear. But Jeremy had already turned his back. His eyes scanned the house, the walls that once echoed with laughter, the small yard where dreams once grew. A piece of his soul seemed to crumble inside him, but his face gave nothing away. David, Jeremy called. Yes, sir, his assistant answered, stepping forward. Prepare the convoy. We are leaving. Sandra let out a scream that cut through the afternoon air. She crawled across the dusty ground, clutching at the hem of Jeremy's trousers, but the guard stepped in, pulling her back. Please, she cried. Don't leave me like this. I was blind, Jeremy. Blind. Jeremy stopped, his back still turned. Blindness is forgivable, Sandra. But betrayal? That cuts too deep. He climbed into the SUV. The door shut with a heavy finality. Engines roared again, louder this time, and the convoy rolled out of the compound, leaving Sandra on the ground, covered in dust, her sobs filling the air. The neighbors whispered louder now. Some pitied her. Others said she got exactly what she deserved. A few shook their heads at Jude, who sat pale and broken, still trapped between the guards. Sandra clutched her belly, her voice shaking. Jude, you promised me a life. You promised me everything. But Jude had no words. He stared blankly, knowing the buyers who had lured him away had likely disappeared with the money. He was trapped, not just by the guards, but by his own greed. Inside the SUV, Jeremy leaned back, closing his eyes. His disguise was gone, but the pain was fresh. David sat quietly beside him, unsure if he should speak. After a long silence, Jeremy finally broke it. 10 years, David. 10 years of working, building, sacrificing. And for what? To come home to this? David sighed, choosing his words carefully. Sir, sometimes tests reveal answers we never wanted, but they are still answers. Jeremy opened his eyes, staring out the tinted window. Lagos streets blurred past yellow buses, hawkers chasing cars with bottles of water, children waving at the convoy. Life moved on, unaware of the storm raging in his chest. She was my wife. Jeremy whispered. The one I trusted above all. And now, she carries another man's child. David looked at him with quiet respect. Sir, maybe this was necessary. Better to know the truth now than later, when more is at stake. Jeremy nodded slowly. He knew David was right. He had built companies, earned wealth beyond measure, but all of it meant nothing without loyalty at home. And now he had his answer. Back at the bungalow, Sandra's cries grew louder as the reality sank in. Jude tried to slip away when the guards finally released him, but Sandra grabbed his shirt desperately. Don't leave me, Jude. You're all I have left. Jude pulled her hand away coldly. Sandra, I have nothing. The buyers tricked me. The money is gone. Everything is gone. Her eyes widened. What? Her voice cracked like glass. You mean, we sold the house for nothing? Jude shook his head, bitterness twisting his face. You thought you were smart. You thought betraying Jeremy was your victory. Look at us now. Sandra slapped him hard across the face, the sound echoing through the yard. Jude didn't react. He just stared at her with dead eyes, then turned and walked away without looking back. Sandra collapsed to the ground, clutching her belly, sobbing uncontrollably. The neighbors murmured, some shaking their heads, others too afraid to come closer. For the first time, Sandra realized she was truly alone. Jeremy's convoy glided through Victoria Island, past tall glass buildings that glittered like jewels under the city lights. The cars pulled into a massive compound, a sleek mansion Jeremy had built in secret. The gates opened smoothly, revealing gardens lit with soft golden lamps, a fountain that sparkled in the moonlight, and staff lined up, bowing as their master returned home. Inside, Jeremy walked into the grand living room. Chandeliers hung above, casting warm light over marble floors. On a table lay stacks of documents the empire he had built, while the world thought he was just another hustler abroad. David handed him a glass of water. Sir, tomorrow's board meeting is ready. But tonight, you need rest. Jeremy nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He walked to a window overlooking the garden, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. Behind that reflection, he could almost see Sandra as she was 10 years ago, young, hopeful, smiling under that mango tree. That memory stabbed deeper than any betrayal. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he whispered, the world will know Jeremy is back. But in his heart, a storm brewed, and he knew this was only the beginning. Back in the old bungalow, Sandra sat in darkness. The house was silent, empty, and suffocating. She clutched her belly, rocking back and forth. Her tears had dried into streaks on her cheeks. Her mirror lay broken on the floor, reflecting a face she barely recognized. For the first time in years, she felt fear not of Jeremy, not of Jude, but of herself, of the choices she had made, of the future she had destroyed. Her whispers filled the room like a prayer. What have I done? Oh God, what have I done? The night gave her no answer. And as Lagos slept, two lives once joined under a mango tree now walked separate roads, one paved with wealth and power, the other sinking fast into shadows. Sandra is left broken and alone, but her downfall has only begun. The sun rose over Lagos, bright and unforgiving. The city bustled as usual, hawkers shouted, buses honked, and the smell of roasted corn drifted through the air. But in two corners of the city, storms brewed silently. Jeremy stood before the mirror in his mansion, his tailored suit fitting him like a second skin. He looked every bit the billionaire he had become, but his eyes told a different story, eyes shadowed with pain. Last night had been long. Memories haunted him. Sandra's laughter when they were young, the promises under the mango tree, the betrayal that had cut deeper than any knife. David entered quietly, holding a tablet. "Sir, the press has caught wind of your return. By noon, the whole of Lagos will know Jeremy Adeyemi is back." Jeremy nodded. His voice was calm but edged with steel. "Good. Let them know. I didn't build an empire abroad to come home silently. Nigeria must hear my voice again." David hesitated, then spoke. "But, sir, the rumors are already spreading. About what happened with Madame Sandra. People are talking." Jeremy's jaw tightened. "Let them talk. The truth has its own voice." He turned away, stepping out of the room. But as he walked down the marbled hallway, his chest felt heavy. Power had returned to his hands, but peace was far away. Meanwhile, Sandra sat in the small bungalow, her once proud face streaked with tears. The neighbors had stopped gossiping loudly, but their whispers still cut her like blades. Some pitied her, others said she had reaped what she sowed. The compound that once made her feel secure now felt like a prison. Jude had vanished, leaving her with nothing but shame. She had not eaten since yesterday. Her belly growled, reminding her of the unborn child inside her, the child she once thought would give her leverage, now a burden she could barely carry. As she stared at the cracked ceiling, her best friend Nadia walked in. Nadia was tall, elegant, with skin that glowed like polished ebony. Her Ankara dress fit perfectly, and her gold earrings sparkled under the morning light. Unlike Sandra, she carried herself with dignity. Sandra sat up quickly, eyes red. "Nadia, thank God you came. Please, you have to talk to Jeremy for me. You know he listens to you." Nadia's lips curved into a faint smile, but her eyes were cold. "Sandra, do you realize what you've done? You poured soap water on your husband, the man who gave you everything, and you let Jude of all people into your bed." Sandra's voice broke. "I didn't know he came disguised. How was I to know he was still the Jeremy I once loved?" Nadia crossed her arms, shaking her head slowly. "No, Sandra, you knew. You just didn't care. You wanted quick riches, and you betrayed him. That was not blindness, that was greed." Sandra grabbed her friend's hand desperately. "Please, Nadia. You are my sister. Help me beg him. You know his heart. You know he still loves me deep down." Nadia pulled her hand away, her expression unreadable. "Maybe once, but not anymore." Sandra blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Nadia took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Jeremy called me last night." Sandra's mouth dropped open. "What?" Nadia nodded, her smile widening now. "He asked me to meet him. He said he needed someone loyal, someone who never betrayed him. He asked me to stand by his side, as his wife." The world spun before Sandra's eyes. She clutched her chest, gasping. "No, no, Nadia, you're lying." But Nadia's smile was calm, steady, and triumphant. "Lagos will know soon. Jeremy is planning a banquet tomorrow. There, he will announce his engagement to me." Sandra let out a scream that shook the walls. She grabbed Nadia's wrapper, tearing it slightly. "You snake, you were my friend. You stood in my house, ate my food, wore my clothes." Nadia yanked her wrapper free, her eyes sharp like daggers. "And you threw away the treasure God gave you. You mocked him, abused him, and now you cry?" "Sandra, life is not kind to fools." She turned on her heel, striding out of the room. Her perfume lingered in the air, choking Sandra more than the dust in the bungalow. Sandra collapsed back onto the floor, clutching her belly as tears poured freely. "God, no. Jeremy, you can't do this to me. You can't." That evening, Jeremy stood in the vast ballroom of his mansion. The chandeliers glittered, and the marble floors shone like glass. Dozens of guests had already gathered, politicians, businessmen, journalists, and celebrities. Waiters in white shirts and bow ties glided through the crowd, serving champagne. The press cameras flashed endlessly. Every guest wanted a photo with the billionaire who had returned after 10 years abroad. Jeremy shook hands, his smile polite but distant. David leaned close to him. "Sir, she's here." Jeremy turned and saw Nadia enter the ballroom. She was stunning in a flowing golden gown, her hair tied neatly in a bun, her eyes glowing with confidence. The crowd gasped as whispers spread like fire. Jeremy extended his hand. Nadia took it gracefully. They walked together to the center of the ballroom. Cameras clicked furiously. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jeremy's voice boomed across the hall, amplified by the microphone. "I thank you all for being here tonight. 10 years ago, I left Nigeria with nothing but hope. I return today with more than wealth. I return with vision, with strength, and with truth." The crowd clapped, some shouting his name. Jeremy raised his hand, silencing them. "And tonight," he continued, his eyes flicking briefly toward Nadia, "I also return with a new beginning. I have chosen a woman who stood by me when others betrayed me, a woman of loyalty, courage, and faith. I present to you, Nadia, my bride-to-be." The room exploded in cheers and applause. Cameras flashed non-stop. Nadia's smile widened as she leaned closer to Jeremy, her hand resting proudly on his arm. But outside the gates, Sandra stood barefoot in the dust, tears streaming down her face as she watched the mansion glow with lights. She had begged the guards to let her in, but they shoved her away. She now stood among curious neighbors and journalists, her wrapper torn, her eyes wild. "Jeremy!" she screamed through the gates. "Jeremy, it's me, your wife. Please don't do this." The crowd turned, murmuring in shock. Cameras swiveled to capture the scene. Reporters whispered furiously, their pens scratching. The story had just become bigger. Inside, Jeremy heard the commotion. His jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Nadia leaned closer, whispering, "Ignore her. Tonight is ours." Sandra's screams grew louder. "Jeremy, don't marry her. She's my friend. She's betraying me." "Jeremy, remember our vows. Remember the mango tree." The words pierced Jeremy's chest like arrows. For a moment, his calm mask cracked. His eyes flickered with pain. He remembered the mango tree, the laughter, the promises, but then his face hardened. He turned back to the guests, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," he said firmly. The crowd echoed, "To new beginnings." Sandra collapsed outside the gate, her sobs swallowed by the noise of music and applause from within. As midnight struck, Jeremy walked Nadia to the grand staircase. Flashes of light followed them, applause still ringing. Yet inside, Jeremy felt hollow. The image of Sandra crying outside the gate refused to leave his mind. He clenched his fist, whispering to himself, "This is justice. This is what she deserves." But deep inside, a quiet voice asked, "Or is this revenge?" Sandra, broken and humiliated, vows not to give up. But Jeremy's engagement to Nadia has already shaken Lagos society. Is this truly the end of Sandra's chapter, or the beginning of a darker twist? The night after Jeremy's grand banquet was restless for Lagos. Social media platforms buzzed with endless chatter. Pictures of Jeremy and Nadia, hand in hand under the golden chandelier, flooded Instagram and Twitter. Headlines screamed across blogs. Billionaire returns, engages best friend of ex-wife. Sandra humiliated at mansion gates, tears as Jeremy chooses Nadia. 10 years abroad, Billionaire finds love again. In the middle of this storm sat Sandra, broken on the floor of her small, dusty bungalow. The room was pitch black, the only light coming from the dim street lamp outside. Her wrapper was loose, her hair untidy, and her cheeks stained with dried tears. She had not eaten. She had not slept. Her belly growled with hunger, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her heart. She rocked back and forth on the cold cement floor, whispering to herself, "He was mine. Jeremy was mine. Nadia stole him from me. No, no, no. This cannot end like this." Her voice was raw, half sob, half whisper. She pressed her hand on her belly. "This child will not grow up without a father. I will not allow it. If Jeremy thinks he can erase me, he is wrong." The next morning, Sandra dressed herself as best as she could. She borrowed a simple gown from a neighbor and tied her hair with a scarf. With trembling hands, she set out for Victoria Island, where Jeremy's new mansion stood. The guards at the gate had shoved her away before, but she had a new plan. She would speak to the press. By the time she arrived, reporters were already gathered outside, hungry for fresh gossip. Cameras swung toward her immediately. Microphones extended like weapons. "Madam Sandra, Madam Sandra," one journalist shouted. "Is it true that Jeremy abandoned you for your best friend?" Sandra's eyes glistened with tears. She raised her hand dramatically. "Yes, it is true. Jeremy is my husband. For 10 years I waited, believing he would come back to me. And when he returned, instead of love, he gave me betrayal. And now he wants to marry my best friend Nadia." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The cameras clicked furiously. Sandra's voice cracked as she clutched her belly. "And what about this child? This is Jeremy's child. His blood runs in my womb. Will he deny his own flesh and blood?" The reporters went wild. Questions flew at her from every side. She stumbled backward, overwhelmed by the noise, but inside she smiled bitterly. She had planted the seed. By evening, the headlines would twist in her favor. Inside the mansion, Jeremy was in a meeting with investors when David hurried into the room, holding his phone. "Sir, you need to see this," David said, lowering his voice. Jeremy frowned, taking the phone. His eyes scanned the live broadcast. Sandra's face filled the screen, swollen with tears, her voice breaking as she spoke about the unborn child. Jeremy's heart stopped for a moment. The investors watched him closely, whispering. He set the phone down, his face unreadable. "Excuse me," Jeremy said, rising from his chair. He stormed out of the room, his fists clenched. "David," he said sharply, "find out which station aired that. And call my lawyers immediately." David nodded, already dialing. Jeremy paced back and forth in the hallway, his mind torn. Could it be true? Could Sandra truly be carrying his child? Or was this another act, another manipulation? That evening, Nadia arrived at the mansion in a red silk gown, smiling brightly. But her smile faded when she saw Jeremy's stormy face. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. Jeremy shoved the tablet into her hands. "Look at this." Nadia's eyes widened as Sandra's broadcast played on the screen. For a moment, her jaw tightened, but then she chuckled bitterly. "She is desperate. Can't you see? This is her last weapon." Jeremy's eyes narrowed. "But what if it's true? What if she carries my child?" Nadia's voice sharpened. "Jeremy, listen to me. That woman does not deserve your sympathy. She betrayed you with Jude. She mocked you. Do not let her chain you again." Jeremy turned away, staring out the tall glass windows. Lagos lights twinkled in the distance, but his mind was cloudy. "Still, if the child is mine, I cannot abandon it." Nadia's hand gripped his arm firmly. "Then demand proof. Don't let her play on your guilt. Make her prove it." Jeremy nodded slowly. He knew Nadia was right. 2 days later, Sandra received a letter from Jeremy's lawyers. It demanded that she come for a paternity test once the child was born. If it proved to be Jeremy's, he would take responsibility. If not, she would face charges for defamation. Sandra tore the letter apart in fury. "So, this is how he sees me. A liar, a criminal. No, Jeremy, if you want war, I will give you war." Her mind raced. She needed a plan. She needed allies. And there was only one person who hated Jeremy as much as she did Jude. She found him in a dingy bar in Oshodi, his once proud face now shadowed by failure. His shirt was wrinkled, his beard unkempt. When he saw Sandra, he spat on the ground. "What do you want?" he growled. Sandra slid into the seat across from him, her eyes burning. "I want revenge. On Jeremy. On Nadia. On everyone who mocked us." Jude laughed bitterly. "Revenge? You're finished, Sandra. And so am I. Jeremy crushed us both." Sandra leaned closer, her voice a whisper. "Not yet. He may have money, but we have the truth. You and I, we know his past. We know his weaknesses. Together, we can destroy him." Jude studied her face for a long moment. Then, slowly, his lips curled into a smile. "Go on." Back at the mansion, Jeremy's mind was far from calm. His empire was growing, his return had shaken Nigeria. But scandal was threatening to overshadow everything. He sat alone in his study, staring at the documents before him. A knock came at the door. David entered, his face serious. "Sir, there's something you should know." The press is digging deeper. Rumors are spreading not just about Sandra, but about your business abroad. Enemies are whispering that you didn't build it cleanly. Jeremy's jaw tightened. He slammed his fist against the desk. Lies, all lies. David hesitated. Sir, you must be careful. They are preparing something. I believe Sandra and Jude are behind it. Jeremy's chest burned with rage. Then let them come. I will show them who Jeremy Adeyemi truly is. That night, as Sandra walked home from her meeting with Jude, she looked up at the sky. The moon hung heavy above the city. Her tears glistened in the pale light. They think I am finished, she whispered. But I will rise again, even if it costs me my soul. Her eyes blazed with new fire. For the first time since Jeremy's return, she felt alive again. Not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a woman with a mission. Inside his mansion, Jeremy stood by his window, looking out over the city. His empire was strong, his future seemed bright, but deep in his heart he knew the battle had only just begun. And somewhere in the shadows, Sandra and Jude were sharpening their knives. The ballroom glittered with golden light as Jeremy raised his glass beside Nadia and announced their wedding date. Cameras flashed endlessly. Guests clapped, smiling at the sight of Nigeria's most eligible billionaire announcing his engagement. But outside the mansion's gate, Sandra screamed and wailed, pounding on the iron bars until her palms bled. Jeremy, it's me, your wife. You can't do this. You can't marry my best friend. Her voice pierced the night, but Jeremy didn't move. His jaw was tight, his heart conflicted, yet he stood firm. Inside, Nadia leaned closer, whispering with a smile, "Ignore her. Tonight belongs to us." The humiliation at the gate burned Sandra's soul. That night she swore she wouldn't give up. She went to find Jude again, the man who had once promised her the world. She found him in a smoky bar in Oshodi, broke and bitter. "Jeremy thinks he has won," Sandra hissed, "but we will show him he is not untouchable." Jude smirked, sipping cheap beer. "And how do you plan to do that, Sandra? He has money, power, and now Nadia. What do you have?" Sandra's eyes blazed. "I have you, and I have the truth, or at least something that looks like it." They spent nights forging documents and feeding lies to hungry journalists. Soon headlines screamed, "Jeremy's empire built on fraud. Secret child in London is billionaire hiding another family. Nadia in danger. Did Jeremy buy her love with stolen wealth?" Jeremy's investors panicked. Calls flooded his office. Stocks wavered. The empire he had built seemed to tremble. 3 days later, Jeremy hosted a corporate gala to reassure his partners. As he addressed the audience, the doors burst open. Sandra stormed in, dressed in rags, but eyes blazing with fury. Jude followed, holding up a folder of forged documents. "This man is a liar," Sandra shouted. "He left me to suffer, and now he parades himself as a saint. Look at these papers. He built his wealth through fraud." The hall gasped. Cameras swung toward them. Jeremy's chest tightened, but he did not panic. Slowly, he gestured to his assistant, who wheeled out a projector. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jeremy said calmly, "I expected this. Allow me to show you the real truth." On the screen appeared audio recordings of Jude boasting about his scams. Photos showed Sandra signing fake documents. Evidence piled up. Bank slips, messages, confessions. The audience turned against Sandra and Jude instantly. "Lies," Sandra cried, trembling. "He is framing us." But Jude, sensing his own doom, shoved her aside. "Enough. You're on your own, Sandra." He fled the hall, leaving her surrounded by cameras and scorn. Security dragged Sandra out. Her last scream echoed through the hall. "Jeremy, you'll regret this." From that night, Sandra's world crumbled. Jude disappeared with the last money they had scraped together. The house she sold was gone. Jude vanished with it. Neighbors mocked her. Friends vanished. Pregnant and penniless, Sandra ended up on the streets. She slept under bridges, surviving on scraps and the pity of strangers. Her once beautiful skin grew dull, her clothes tattered, her laughter gone. 8 months later, she gave birth on the dirty floor beneath the Ojuelegba underbridge. Good Samaritans helped her, wrapping the crying baby boy in an old wrapper. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered, "You will be my hope, my second chance." But fate was cruel. 1 month later, the baby fell sick. Sandra begged on the streets for money for treatment, but people turned away. The hospital demanded a deposit she couldn't afford. Her baby died in her arms, his tiny body still and cold. Sandra screamed until her voice broke. Her tears fell freely as she clutched the body of her child. That night, she buried her hope with her own hands in a shallow grave. Weeks later, Jeremy's convoy rolled through Lagos. His sleek black SUVs moved like shadows across the city. As they passed under the bridge, Jeremy's sharp eyes caught sight of a frail figure curled up in the dirt. "Stop," he commanded. The cars screeched to a halt. His bodyguards looked puzzled, but Jeremy stepped out. His expensive shoes touched the dusty ground as he walked toward the woman. When Sandra raised her head, his heart clenched. Her face was gaunt, her hair unkempt, her eyes hollow. "Jeremy," she whispered. Jeremy's voice trembled, his eyes wet. "Sandra, what happened to you?" With broken sobs, she told him everything: how Jude had defrauded her, how she sold the house and was left with nothing, how her baby had died because she had no money. Jeremy's chest burned with sorrow. Despite all she had done, he remembered the woman he once loved, the girl under the mango tree. "Get up," he said softly. He held out his hand. For a moment Sandra hesitated, then took it. He lifted her gently, guiding her toward the car. Inside, Nadia sat waiting. She was radiant in a blue gown, her smile calm, but her eyes sharp. Sandra froze when she saw her. Jeremy spoke quietly. "Sandra, this is Nadia, my fiancée. We will be married in 2 days." Sandra's heart shattered again. Tears spilled as she whispered, "My best friend, marrying the man I betrayed. God, what have I done?" Jeremy didn't take her home to shame her. Instead, he and Nadia drove her to a salon. Her hair was washed, her face cleaned, her body clothed in dignity once more. Then they went to a supermarket, where Jeremy filled carts with food, clothes, and essentials. When Sandra stepped out in her new dress, she burst into tears. She fell to her knees, clutching Jeremy's hands. "I messed up," she sobbed. "I failed myself. I don't deserve this kindness. I destroyed everything, yet you still lift me." Jeremy raised her gently. His voice was firm but kind. "Sandra, everyone makes mistakes, but you cannot die for your mistakes. Learn from them. Change." He pressed an envelope into her hands. Inside was a check for 5 million naira. Sandra gasped, shaking her head. "No, this is too much. I can't." "You can," Jeremy said. "Start a new life. Build something. Prove to yourself that you have learned." Sandra wept uncontrollably, clutching the check to her chest. 2 days later, Lagos glittered again as Jeremy and Nadia married in a grand ceremony. Politicians, celebrities, and businessmen filled the hall. Jeremy stood tall in a white agbada embroidered with gold, while Nadia shone in a flowing lace gown. At the back of the hall, Sandra sat quietly, her eyes brimming with tears. She watched as her best friend became the wife of the man she had once mocked and betrayed. Yet there was no bitterness in her heart, now only regret and humility. Jeremy and Nadia's marriage blossomed with love, though children never came despite their efforts. They poured their energy into expanding the company's reach across Africa, building schools and hospitals, their kindness shaping lives. Sandra, with the 5 million naira Jeremy gave her, opened a grocery store. It grew quickly, feeding families in her community. She became known not for her past mistakes, but for her humility and generosity. Whenever young women came to her, she would say with tears in her eyes, "Greed will destroy you, betrayal will bury you, but humility will raise you again." And so, her life became a living lesson for many women. In the end, Jeremy proved that kindness could outshine betrayal. Nadia showed that loyalty was stronger than greed, and Sandra, once broken and proud, became the living testimony that mistakes can humble, but mercy can heal. Jeremy and Nadia still hopes they will have children in the future to call their own and raise them to be kind to everyone, even those who don't deserve their kindness. What is your view about this story? If you were in Jeremy's shoes, would you have forgiven Sandra despite all she did? Do you think what Nadia did is right by getting married to her best friend's husband? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.